I am sure you can all relate. You put up new Etsy listings, you're super excited, even confident that they are going to do well, sell lots, get a lot of traffic, and it's going to be a big success. And then what happens? Crickets. No traffic, no sales, no nothing. Ouch. This is super painful, but not unfamiliar to most of us in the Etsy game. The longer you do it, the more quote unquote failures you're going to have as far as listings. So today I want to help you see exactly why your listings are not selling and give you my listing success formula. You definitely do not want to miss this episode. Let's go. Hey everyone, what is going on? Welcome back to the Handmade and Beyond podcast. I am your host, LL. Glad to be back hanging out with you guys, talking shop, talking Etsy, talking all this good stuff. Today I have a killer episode for you guys. I want to give you my Etsy success formula, a way to see exactly why your listings are not performing, and it'll give you the information and the roadmap on how to improve so that you can hopefully turn things around and get your listings to get more traffic, which in return will increase the odds that you will get more sales. It's no question that selling online is tough, no matter the platform. It's not easy. I don't care how many influencers or people online tell you it's easy. It is never easy. It is tough. It's an uphill battle. And that's why most people don't continue on with it, because it can get super painful. But what separates the successful sellers and the non successful ones are two things. First, like I just mentioned, is not giving up. A motto I live by and I always talk about is you can never fail if you never give up. It's impossible. You got to keep going. You're going to find success if you never give up. So I always live by that. I always remind myself of that when times get tough. And being an entrepreneur, times get tough a lot, more times than sometimes than things get good. And the second thing that separates the successful sellers and the non-successful sellers is that they invest in knowledge and learning from others, learning the platform. They're a student of the game, a student of what's going on, and they learn and improve over time. You cannot find success if you don't learn where that comes from and how to pick up on the gold nuggets that are left out for you. Many sellers are in cruise control, not paying attention to the things passing them by that could help them. And this is one of what I'm going to dive in today. I'm going to give you these gold nuggets. I'm going to give you these things that can actually help you succeed if you pay attention to them. So today we're going to get off cruise control. We're going to take an active part in changing the tide in your Etsy success. So how do you determine, or how do you see why your listings are not selling? The short answer is listing stats. All of the listings compile stats, which you can see if you hit the little gear icon on the bottom right in your listings tab. And the stats will give you a lot of valuable insight into what is going on with your listings. And I know, stay with me. Don't tune out because I said stats. This isn't going to be your high school stats class, super boring. It's not necessarily the most sexy thing or the most exciting thing that people talk about, but once you realize how much this information can actually help you and give you a roadmap to follow, you guys are going to be tuned in and super engaged in this episode and ready to use this information for your own shop. There's not a lot of stats in there, which makes it pretty simple, but also the missing piece is kind of learning what those stats mean and how to apply that knowledge to your own shop. So the top stats when you go in there are visits, items sold, and revenue. So the last two, items sold and revenue, are pretty self-explanatory, right? But visits, if you're not sure what that means, it's basically unique people coming into your shop. So think about a brick and mortar. You have 3 people walk in the door. That's 3 visits. The difference is, a lot of people get confused, is views. Views are the number of times someone has looked at your items. So you could have one person walk in the door, 1 visit. They look at 20 items, that's 20 views. The same thing, you have 3 people walk in the door, 3 visits. They look at 100 items, that's 100 views. So that is the difference. Visits I like to pay attention to more. I think it's more impactful because you always want to get more people in the door. More people has a higher potential of more sales than just one person looking at 20 of your items. If you have 3 people looking at 20 of your items, the chances of someone buying is a lot higher. So that is the difference between the two. And for the intent of purposes of this episode, we're going to talk about visits. So visits is the key metric to look at and a big part of my Etsy listing success formula. The first thing that you need to look at when it comes to this and what you need to consider is the time your listings have been up. So that's a big part of this, and I'm going to dive into that specifically. So this is very important. How long your listings have been up really matters, and it really plays a part in how you interpret your visits. So let's break this down into specifics so that you guys know exactly how to use this to your advantage. But before we dive in, I just want to let you guys know that if you struggle, which most of us do when it comes to Etsy and SEO and marketing, or you're confused as to what it actually is, I have a free Etsy SEO success ebook for you guys. It's everything you need to know about SEO and how to use it to get more traffic and sales in your Etsy business. Super useful information, super actionable. And there's tons of gold nuggets and tips inside there as well. So make sure you guys get that at handmadeandbeyond.com/Etsy SEO success. All right, so let's dive into this Etsy listing formula so you guys know how to apply it. So first, I prefer not to really look at and especially not make changes with listings before 3 months. Why is this? Well, you could mess with the algorithm, which takes time to work in your favor. It's not instant. It's not like you put up a listing and in the next day or two, the algorithm categorizes it and it's going to start sending traffic your way. No, it usually takes time, and usually it's a couple of weeks and a couple of months before it analyzes your keywords and your listing, how people are interacting with your listings, different buyer behavior, which you don't have any control over compared to your listing, your stats. There's a lot of different moving parts behind the scenes, and it just takes time. You can't make rash, quick decisions. You got to let it sit and let it stew for a while before you make time. It's like you make a stew, you throw in the potatoes, the carrots, and all this stuff, and then 5 minutes later you eat it. No, it's gonna be the carrots and potatoes are gonna be hard. So you got to let it simmer for a while before it's ready to go, before you can analyze it and you know what's going on. So here's the breakdown. We're going to look at this, and you're going to look at your stats the first 3 to 6 months. And there's 3 different scenarios that your stats are going to tell you. So the first scenario in this is 3 to 6 month range is we go in and we do that gear icon and we look at our stats. And of course, if you don't have any sales, that's one, and you have 0 to 25 visits, not a lot of visits. That tells us in this scenario that the issue probably is one of 2 things. First one is it's SEO, meaning the keywords that we're using, it's not bringing in traffic. So it's not, for whatever reason, that people are not coming and finding that listing and not even clicking into the listing when they're finding it. So it could be an SEO problem. We may not be using the right keywords. We may not be using enough keywords. Keywords may be too broad. Our keywords may be too specific. A lot of different things going on there. So SEO is probably the main thing going on. The second thing that may be going on is pictures. So your pictures are very important. Remember, your picture shows up as a little guy mixed with 50 to 100 other pictures people are scrolling by. If your picture is dark, fuzzy, you can't read it, it's too busy, too messy, not clear, busy background, they're not going to stop on your listing and click into it if they can't tell what it is or it's not engaging to them. So that's the first step to get them to stop in their tracks and want to come into the door of your shop. If you're just thinking about you're walking down the street and you see a dark lit store, you're not even sure what it is, what they sell, it's not clear. Are you going to walk in there? No, you're not going to walk in there. You're going to be afraid that you're going to get robbed and never come back. You're going to be a missing person. So make sure your picture is engaging to the customer, that they're going to want to come in their store without fear of you taking all their money and robbing them. It's extreme example, but you get my point. Your pictures get them in the door and click on the listing. All right, so that's step 1. So take a look at your listing, have other people look at your pictures and be like, is this good? Chances are, if you're a new seller, your pictures aren't good. It's the fact of the matter. It's one of those things that you use like training wheels. You got to get better. My pictures were hot garbage early on. I just over time you put in the reps, you get better and better and better. All right, that's scenario one. So that gives you the information that you know where starting point. Okay, here's where I'm at. Here's what I need to focus on. Scenario two, after 3 to 6 months, we go in there and we have like 40 to 75 visits. Decent amount of visits, right? We're getting there. I would say in this scenario that you're close, you're on the cusp. You don't have any sales yet, but you need more time. You're getting traffic, and people may be like, well, 75 visits is a lot, and I don't have any sales. Well, think of it this way. The average conversion rate, basically the average rate of conversion of people buying for Etsy is 1 to 3%. So at 1%, that means after 100 visits, you have one purchase. So that is a 1% conversion rate. 2% is after 100 visits, you have two purchases, and so on. So conversion, how you figure it out, and Etsy will tell you on your overall shop, but how you figure it out is you take your sales divided by your visits, and that'll give you your conversion rate. But the average does vary between different niches and also pricing. If you have higher priced items, your conversion is naturally going to be lower. But that is the general range. So that tells us, okay, if I need on the low end of the spectrum 100 visits to see if I'm going to get a purchase, and I'm at 75, it just needs more time. And then once you shoot over 100, then it's like, okay, we're getting into the territory where there could be some other problems. So that's scenario two, more time, and that's kind of a little bit of the why behind the why. Scenario three is the far end of the spectrum where you're getting visits. You have 100 plus visits, right? You're getting the traffic, you're getting the people in the door, but people aren't buying. So why are they not buying? They're coming into the shop, but they're not buying. So that tells me that there's a problem inside your listing. There's a problem with the pricing. They don't like the pricing for some reason. Could be too low, which people automatically, or it could be too high, or it could be too low. People forget that lowering your price too much hinders the perceived quality of the item. You know what I mean? You think of the dollar store or Dollar Tree or whatever. Some of them are $1, some of them are under $5, Five Below. I know immediately walking into that store that anything I'm going to buy in there is garbage, right? It's not going to last. It's garbage. Maybe I'll go in there for cheap stuff that I know is cheap, plates or napkins or whatever, party favors is cheap, throwaway type items. But I'm not going in there being like, oh, I'm going to get a shirt and I'm going to wear it for 10 years and it's going to be my favorite shirt. No, it's not going to happen. So perceived value is in pricing. So your stuff may be too low. People are like, this is probably cheap if you're far under your competition. And a lot of people I know will like automatically assume they're priced too high. No, pricing too low does hurt you as well. The next thing is your description. Maybe your description has like a one-liner. It's just not good. Maybe you do a keyword dump in there. It looks spammy. Maybe it's just written where there's a lot of typos. There's confusion. So that kind of piggyback into the next thing is there's confusion somewhere in the listing. If you have personalization and it's not clear how to select things, how to choose their personalization. So if people are getting confused people do not buy, right? They will not buy. The other thing is that there could be too many options, right? Paralysis by analysis, by paralysis. Paralysis by analysis. I think this is the right terminology. If you give people too many options, they're not going to buy either because they're like they can't make a decision. Indecision leads to non-purchases. So think about that. If you have a ton of variations and a ton of different things, it could be too much. Simpler is better. The last thing is it could be the wrong audience. It could be an SEO problem, but it's a wrong audience. If you're targeting the wrong audience and it's people are clicking into it and seeing the stuff that just are never going to buy, that could be the issue too. So that gives you a starting point. That is scenario 3. So every end of the spectrum is covered. Scenario 1, 2, and 3. So now let's just say you make changes based on scenario 1 or 3. 1 was low traffic, 3 was a lot of traffic, but in both scenarios, no sales. You need to give it another couple of months to see if your changes made a positive impact or not. Again, do not make a bunch of changes in a short amount of time. This will hurt you. The algorithm will just never be able to categorize your stuff and won't know what the heck you're doing. And in all that time, it's going to push you further and further back in search. So it's going to have the opposite effect. If you're in scenario 2, which was giving it more time, once you give it more time, you may decide that it's still not performing well, and then you may make some changes based on what the stats are telling you. It's probably going to move into scenario 3. So that's what you do there. Now, if in any of these scenarios you start to get sales or even have one sale, I'd recommend not making changes. I'd recommend letting it ride, giving it more time. I know one sale may not be ideal, you may want more, but we have to look at it this way. There could be some seasonality built in somewhere that you don't really realize, so you almost have to wait to the next year to see if it really takes off. I mean, I've had this happen before where you're just kind of on the edge of the seasonality, and it may not be obvious seasonality. It may not be a holiday or something like that, but it's just a purchase trends where you may only get one sale, and then the next year, since your listing's already up, you start getting a bunch of sales. You just missed it the year before. So that's one thing to kind of give it time. And I know a lot of times we don't want to wait, but that could very well happen. And it's surprising, but it has happened to me multiple times. So those are the different scenarios. And here are some things to keep in mind when it comes to the listing success formula and kind of doing this to determine how your stuff is performing and the decisions to make. So the listing success formula is based on averages. Your niche, like I mentioned earlier, may be slightly different, meaning that the number thresholds may be higher or may be lower, but regardless, they mean the same thing. Low traffic usually means the same thing. Lots of traffic with no sales usually means the same thing is wrong with your listings. And that's where you got to take a look and start making some changes. Do not delete underperforming listings, at least not for a while. We forget that building out your product catalog and building out your shop is really important to the algorithm, giving the algorithm more data, there's more data points in terms of more keywords targeting your niche, makes you more of a player in your niche. So bad performing listings could still help your shop. You could still bring in traffic and people are bouncing to the other listings and buying. So you don't want to have 50 listings and then 40 of them are underperforming, and then you delete 40 and then you have 10 left. It's going to kill your traffic. The goal is to keep building up your shop, keep giving that data points. Realistically speaking, there's only going to be about 20% of your listings bring in the majority of your revenue. I've talked about this before, 80-20 rule. 20% of your listings are going to bring in about 80% of your revenue, and then the rest are going to bring in the rest. It's just the way that it works. So you got to have that product catalog to build up those data points to give it more data that's in return going to help your shop. It doesn't mean that you won't delete stuff over time that are just performing abysmally and not getting zero traffic and you've tried everything. Yeah, that's going to happen, but it's going to take time. It should not be first on your mind to do anytime soon. The next thing to keep in mind is you can scroll further down in your listings in the stats, and you can see where your traffic is coming from or where it's not coming from. If you have a listing performing well, you can see where the traffic is coming from and use that information to your advantage to maybe start using that for your other listings. If you have a lot of traffic coming from one source, maybe it's coming from Pinterest, and you're only doing a couple of listings on Pinterest, maybe you want to start promoting your other stuff on Pinterest or Facebook or wherever, depending on your traffic source. So you can use that information to your advantage. Now, if you're getting a lot of traffic from one source, but it's not converting, the people aren't buying, consider not using that source, because that could hurt you too. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of traffic over time without getting conversions is going to hurt you. The algorithm is going to push you further and further back in search. So that's where you got to be careful with promoting your stuff on social media, doing paid ads outside of Etsy. Because if you're getting a bunch of traffic and people aren't buying, the algorithm doesn't like that. The whole goal of the algorithm is to get Etsy money, to get Etsy purchases, and we have to leverage the algorithm to help us make money as well. But if you're getting a bunch of traffic, people are looking and not buying, that does not bode well for the Etsy platform, because the more people look and don't buy, the more the algorithm thinks, oh, they're not going to be coming back because they're not finding something that they like. If you buy something, the sooner customers buy something, the more chances they're going to be back, the more chances they're going to buy more things. And that's the algorithm's only goal in life. So those are the things to keep in mind. Those are the 3 scenarios. That is the listing success formula. That's going to be a great starting point if your stuff is underperforming, and at least knowing where to look and giving you somewhat of a roadmap. So killer episode for today. Hopefully you guys get a lot out of this episode, and make sure you download the Etsy SEO Success ebook. It's free. Lots of really great information in there to help you understand and give you the tips and strategies to further enhance your SEO with Etsy. Make sure you get that at handmadeandbeyond.com/Etsy SEO Success. That's it for today's episode, guys. I'll be back soon with another great episode for you guys. Have an amazing rest of the day.